ॐ गणानां त्वा गणपतिं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमम् ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आनः शृण्वन्नोतिभिः सीदसादनम् ॐ श्रीमहागणाधिपतये नमः। ॐ वृषभं चर्षणीनां विश्वरूपमदाभ्यम् बृहस्पतिं वरेण्यम् ॐ तद्विष्णोः परमं पदं सदा पश्यन्ति सूरयः दिवि वचक्षुराततम् ॐ श्रीं ह्रीं महालक्ष्म्यै नमः। ॐ श्लीं ह्रीं ज्योतिर्ब्राह्माय नमः। Can everybody say Hare Rama Krishna after me 3 times? Om Hare Rama Krishna, Hare Rama Krishna, Hare Rama Krishna. Tenth sloka. Chapter 14, okay. So we are in chapter 14, the fourth house results chapter, and we are apparently on sloka 9. 9 is over. So we have to start 10th. Okay. लग्नस्थानाधिपे सौम्ये सुखेशे नीचराशिगे कारके व्ययभावस्थे सुखेशे लाभसङ्गते द्वादशे वत्सरे प्राप्ते वाहनस्य सुखं वदेत् वाहने सूर्यसंयुक्ते स्वोच्चे तद्भावनायके शुक्रेण संयुते वर्षे द्वात्रिंशे वाहनं भवेत् कर्मेशेन युते बन्धुनाथे तुङ्गांश संयुते. Okay, this is a very specific. लग्नस्थानाधिपे सौम्ये सुखेशे नीचराशिगे कारके व्ययभावस्थे सुखेशे लाभसंगते द्वादशे वत्सरे प्राप्ते वाहनस्य सुखं वदेत्. The result first I will say. द्वादशे वत्सरे प्राप्ते. When the 12th year comes, 12th year in the life of the native, vahanasya sukham vadet, there will be happiness from the vehicle. What is the combination for it? Lagnasthanadhipe saumye means the lord of the lagna is the lord of the sign containing lagna is a saumya. Saumya means natural benefit, like Jupiter or Venus or Mercury. So lagna lord is a natural benefit. Sukheshe Nicha Rashige. The fourth lord is in Nicha. He is in debility. Fourth lord is in debilitation. Karake Vyayabhavasthe. Karake. Karaka means who is the Karaka? Venus. The Karaka of vehicle. So Karake Vyayabhavasthe. Vyaya means 12th house. So Venus is in the 12th house. Sukheshe Labha Sangate. Sukheshe Labha Sangate. That means fourth lord in the 11th house. Fourth lord in the 11th house. So fourth lord in Nicha was mentioned earlier. Now fourth lord in 11th house is mentioned. So combining both, fourth lord has to be in the 11th house in debility. Then in the 12th year, there will be comfort from the vehicle. The person will get vehicle basically very early in life. Now, is it possible for the fourth lord to be in Nicha? Which can you quickly go through each lagna and verify if this is actually possible? Because if it is not possible, this is not Parashara. Somebody else made up that verse, which is possible. Okay, let's go systematically. Aries. What is the fourth house? Cancer. Where is the lord debilitated? 8th house, not 11th house. Okay. Taurus. Who is the fourth lord? Sun. He is debilitated in 6th house. Gemini. Who is the fourth lord? Mercury. He is debilitated in 10th house. Cancer. Who is the fourth lord? Venus. He is debilitated in 3rd house. Leo. Fourth lord is Mars. Mars and Ketu, but okay, Ketu is possible. Okay, Mars, he is debilitated in the 12th house, so ruled out. But if the fourth lord is Ketu and he is, where is Ketu debilitated? Gemini. That is the 11th house. So if the fourth house, if Leo is the Lagna and Ketu happens to be stronger than Mars, so that is one possibility. Okay, what else? Virgo. Who is the, what is the fourth house? Sagittarius, fourth lord Jupiter is debilitated in Capricorn, 5th house, so ruled out. Libra, the fourth lord Saturn, he is debilitated in 7th house. Scorpio, the fourth lord Saturn and Rahu. One fourth lord Rahu is debilitated in the 2nd house, the other one Saturn, he is debilitated in the 6th house. Sagittarius, the fourth lord is Jupiter, he is debilitated in the 2nd house, Capricorn. Capricorn, the fourth lord is Mars, he is debilitated in the 7th house. Then Aquarius, the fourth lord is Venus, he is debilitated in the 8th house, exalted in the 2nd house, debilitated in the 8th house. Pisces, the fourth lord is Mercury, he is debilitated in the 1st house. So only case is Ketu. Pardon me? Okay, I was just curious how Santanam interpreted it. He interpreted this as fourth lord in debility or in the 11th house. The only problem is there is no word that indicates R anywhere. So it is unlikely that it is R. So this is basically an AND. So assuming that this came from Parashara, this is possible only for Leo Lagna, Ketu being the stronger lord.
But Parashara did tell that Ketu debilitated in Gemini or...
He did not specifically tell where Ketu is debilitated. Right. But we get it from elsewhere that Ketu is debilitated in Gemini. So this combination basically means Leo Lagna, Venus in Cancer. But the thing is, Lagna Sthanadhipe Saumya. The Lagna Lord has to be a natural male benefic. Is Sun a natural benefic? Is Sun a natural benefic? No. Sun is not a natural benefic. Mercury, Venus, an increasing moon, and a well associated Mercury. Those are the natural benefics. Pardon me, did I miss Jupiter? Jupiter, Venus. Okay. Jupiter, Venus, a well associated Mercury, and a waxing or waning, waxing moon. Those are the benefics. So Lagna Sthana, let us try to visit again. Lagna Sthanadhipe Somye, Sukheshe Nicharachige, Karake Vaibhavasthe, Sukheshe Labhasam Sangate. So basically, what we have, the situation we have is, the rest does not make sense. If Leo is the Lagna, then Lagna Lord is not a natural malefic. And I am not inclined to equate, taking Santanam's version, Santanam's interpretation, which is fourth Lord either in debilitation or fourth Lord in 11th house, one of the two. That way you can also say Lagna Lord being a natural benefic, or you can put R between each condition. The thing is, Parashara, whenever there is an R, he says Va, or there are certain indicative words. And everywhere he is giving so many combinations, he is basically unless otherwise indicated. So it is very likely that this is R only. Parashara, if it is from Parashara. And the thing is, this probably is not from Parashara in that case. This particular, like I was mentioning earlier, even in other chapters, there are certain combinations that are just too specific, saying 10th year mother dies, or 12th year this happens. Extremely specific combinations. You should see if you have an example like this, and see a few examples if it makes sense. I myself haven't seen any examples. So such specific results, I will be a little skeptical. It is conceivable that whoever put together this did not think that there were enough shlokas in the chapter, so just added some shlokas. And then you can say, if you have Lagna Lord is Mercury and he is in the 8th house with Venus and Jupiter is aspecting him in the 17th year, he stays first in his stays first in intermediate exams. I can come up with a combination like that based on my own chart. So it sounds to me like somebody basically came up with combinations like this. That was always my doubt, and this particular one is very doubtful. The thing is, he explicitly said Nicha Rashi. Otherwise, we could have at least said Nicha Navamsha. He specifically said Nicha Rashi. So he is talking about Nicha Rashi. Labha Sangate. That can't be interpreted as being with the 11th Lord or something. It is Labha Sangate means having gone into the 11th house, not even aspecting or something. The only thing is, instead of Sukheshe, if it was something else like Suteshe or something, it could be some other house. So it is possible that this is a verse from Parasara with some typo somewhere, one particular word gone wrong, or it is also possible that this is basically a fake verse. Let me leave it at that. I told you what each word means. You can try different interpretations. More importantly, if you have a chart where Lagna Lord is a natural benefic, the 4th Lord is in 11th house or debility, you could basically try both of them. And if Venus is in the 12th house, if you could try examples, that will basically, if you see any interesting examples, bring them to my attention. The thing is, if 4th Lord is in debility, why should it indicate having a vehicle very early in life? That also does not really make a lot of sense. And taking the 4th Lord in 11th house or 4th Lord in debility as both of them as alternatives also doesn't make sense. One is not a desirable thing. The other one is 4th Lord in 11th house is basically it's not a bad combination at all. Any planet in the 11th house will give fulfillment of desires relating to that house. And especially with the 4th house, if the 4th Lord is in 11th house, that is the 8th house from 4th house, right? Taking the 4th house as Lagna, if the 4th Lord is in 11th house, it is basically like Lagna Lord is in 8th house. The Lord of the 4th house is in 8th from that house. 8th shows sudden gains or inheritance, etc. So, and Lord of any house will only do good to that house. He won't do harm. So, you will expect the 4th Lord to give sudden gains, unexpectedly getting a vehicle. So, if 4th Lord is in 11th house, getting a vehicle very early in life makes sense. But again, why 12th year? That is not obvious. But debility does not really make a lot of sense. Okay. Actually, let us just speculate here. If it is not debility, but if it is Ucha, is it possible? Can the 4th Lord be in exaltation? Actually, I will not go through the list. Let us do mentally. Yeah, one case is possible. Vargolagna is possible. Then Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. Okay. Lagna, 4th Lord, he would be exalted in Cancer. The 4th house is Cancer, and Jupiter is basically in the Jupiter is in Cancer. He is exalted. And Venus in Leo for Virgo Lagna. That is basically one possible case. Pardon me?
That sign containing that.
The Lord, Mercury. Mercury has to be a natural benefic, which means Mercury should not be associated with any bad planets. If Mercury is either alone or with benefic planets, then he basically qualifies as a natural benefic. Okay. Okay, now let us. So probably it is conceivable that he meant Ucharasige instead of Nicharasige. That is a possibility. Again, if you have any example, that will be really. शुक्रेण संयुते वर्षं not. Then in the 32nd year there will be a vehicle. Karmeshen, pardon me?
You should have.
No, actually, not just, even 32nd year is actually not too late to have a vehicle. There are so many vehicles. So having a good vehicle even at the age of 35 or 40 is basically it is only a good endowment. The thing is, why numbers 12, 32, all these specific numbers? It is conceivable that these are from the planetary years. There is this Naisargika Dasha system in which different years in life are ruled by different planets. So it is conceivable that these numbers are from those planets. Okay.
The vehicle, does it mean any big vehicle? Does it mean or any scooter also will be considered a vehicle?
Yeah, that is a good question. Here he is talking about very specific and rare combinations. So when he is talking about something so specific and something so special, it is probably a good vehicle. General.
Fixing 32.
Right, exactly. That's a very good question. The bottom line is, vehicle literally means something that you use for as your conveyance. It can be a bicycle, it can be your a scooter that my son may be riding on the streets, or it can be a palanquin, it can be anything. It can be a BMW, it can be a helicopter, it can be anything. And the thing is, what is a good vehicle and what is a bad vehicle depends on the person. For somebody, motorcycle may be a much better vehicle than a car, a Maruti Suzuki for example, for somebody. So it is all, when you are talking about a vehicle and happiness from the vehicle, it is all very subjective. But the thing is, here as far as these verses are concerned, if he says Vahanasya Sukham, he is only talking about comfort from a vehicle. So the thing is, somebody may have only a motorcycle but he may be very, very happy. He may be feeling like a king with that motorcycle, as long as this combination is there. Somebody else may not have this combination. He may have a Mercedes Benz, but he may not be happy with his vehicle. He may always be complaining. So here the key is, he is talking about Vahana Sukham. He is not talking about how great a vehicle the person is seen to be possessing. He is not talking about that. And also, based on our earlier learning, before we started this book, we had our generic learning, all our building blocks. There we said the fourth house is the comfort from the vehicle, the actual comfort. The fourth lord is your attitude towards comfort from vehicle. Whereas A4, the Arudha of the fourth house, that is
Tangible.
the actual vehicle itself. If there are benefic influences on fourth house, but let's say Saturn is in A4, then because of Saturn in A4, the actual vehicle on the ground will be Saturn 9. It will be Saturn like. It will be very lowly. It will not be a great car. When people see, oh, he has a stupid, some Hyundai accent or some lowly car. But he will be very happy with it because fourth house has benefits. So fourth house is very strong. So his happiness is very high. Perception is very low. All the Arudha Padas are people's perceptions. Those are the tangible things on the ground using which people form their impressions. Has all these benefic planets, people looking at him will think, oh, he has beautiful cars, but he will be unhappy. Fourth house has Saturn. He is either not using those vehicles all the time, though he has two nice cars in his garage, he is always going in a train because he works in the city, or he is not happy. He is always looking at, oh, I'm stuck with this stupid car, I have to buy the 550, whatever, there are some numbers I believe for BMW, I want the next number. So he is always unhappy. So that kind of things are possible. So here we are talking about Vahana Sukham, and obviously we are not talking about any Arudha Padas so far. We are only talking about planets, Lord of the house and the house itself. Karmeshena jute bandhunathe tungansya samjute. Okay. Karmeshena jute bandhunathe tungansya samjute. Karmeshena jute means, Yuta means conjoined. Karmeshena means with by who? 10th Lord. So 10th Lord, he is conjoined by 10th Lord. Who? Bandhunathe, the Lord of the 4th house. Tungamsha samjute means, Tunga means Tunga, exaltation. Okay. Tungamsha, Amsha means one of the divisions. He didn't mention which one. Probably Navamsha, could even be Chaturthamsha. I mean Shodashamsha, because he said vehicles from Shodashamsha. So either Navamsha or Shodashamsha, he is exalted in that Amsha, and he is with the 4th Lord, he is with the 10th Lord, and actually that's it. So 4th Lord is either with, 4th Lord is with the 10th Lord, and he is exalted in D16 or D9. And then what? Dvichatvarimshake varshe naro vahana bhag bhavet. Dvichatvarimshake varshe. In the 24th year, naro, man, vahana bhag bhavet. Then he will have the fortune of a vehicle. So 4th Lord with the 10th Lord and 4th Lord exalted in the Amsha. Then in the 24th year he will get a vehicle. Labhe se sukha rashisthe sukhe se labha samjute. Labhe se sukha rashisthe. 11th Lord in the 4th house, or sukhe se labha samjute. The 4th Lord in the 11th house. Labhe se sukha rashisthe sukhe se labha samjute. Actually it's not R, it's Hunt. So there is an exchange between the 4th Lord and the 11th Lord. 4th Lord in 11th house, 11th Lord in 4th house. Is it good or bad? It's good. 11th house is fructification of your desires, getting what you want. And 4th house is vehicular comforts. Then, Dvadashe Vatsare Prapte Jato Vahana Bhag Bhavet. Then also, in the Dvadasha Vatsara means 12th year, same as earlier. Earlier also we were talking about 4th Lord in the 11th house. So if 4th Lord is in 11th house, there are two combinations. In both the cases he is talking about the 12th house. So it is also conceivable that Parashara is using some secret dasha system which is like a Rashi dasha, where it starts from 4th Lord, for example. Just like we start from Lagna, right, Narayan dasha, there may be a variation which starts from the 4th house. And if the 4th Lord is in the 11th house, maybe the corresponding dasha runs, either starts in the 12th year or maybe ends in the 12th year or something. 12th year is significant in that particular dasha system. It is conceivable that there is a Rashi dasha. But you can just memorize this principle and see if you have any example, because this may not be very uncommon. For 4th Lord to be in 11th and 11th Lord to be in the 4th house, you will definitely find some examples. Shubham shubhatve bhavasya papatve phalamanyatha. Okay, this is a loaded statement. Shubham shubhatve bhavasya papatve phalamanyatha. Okay, if the house is basically, if the house has functional benefic influences, you should indicate good results. If the house has functional malefic influences, it should indicate bad results. What does it mean? Let's say if the 4th house has 9th lord, it's good. So when the dasha comes, there will be a lot of vehicular happiness, there will be fortune with respect to vehicle and so on. Similarly, let's say 8th lord is in the 4th house. Then there can be some tension relating to the vehicle, or there can be some anxiety, there can be an accident, all those things. So, and similarly, it's not just occupying, it can be aspect also. Let's say 8th lord is aspecting the 4th house, or 8th lord is conjoining the 4th lord. It's not good for the vehicle. So like this, we basically, this is something that we already know, this is not really new. But the thing is, just for the sake of completeness, Parasara mentioned it. So you should look at the influences on the 4th house and the 4th lord. And he has given some examples. These are obviously just some examples. These can't cover all the possible results. And we have seen so many examples in the past where you have to intelligently judge the influences on each house and each house lord. There is no other alternative. These combinations can help to an extent, but the thing is, their aim is to establish the basics for you so that you know how to think. Okay? We will continue with the 5th house unless you want to see some examples. We don't have a computer actually. Sishu is not here.
He told me to pick it up from home.
Oh, that's fine, that's fine. Okay, given that we don't have any computer, we can either have just a subjective discussion. If you have any questions, subjective questions. Actually, before I continue with the 5th house, let me just take a small break and ask you if you have any questions which can be answered without seeing a chart in the computer. I can answer.
I don't know, I should ask Anand. About the Panchangam yesterday you said.
Yeah, Panchanga Shravanam. Yeah.
Panchanga Shravanam.
Yeah.
How do you come with that, like all the combinations you explained about?
Which combination?
Like yesterday you talked about like various rashis and these are the phala and then gochara and like.
Yeah.
Based on astrology or something like that?
Based on astrology, of course.
I mean, you have something.
His question was, I did a Panchanga Shravanam here at a function, at a New Year function. So his question was, I said for various signs how the next year is going to be. So he's asking whether I did it based on astrology or based on something else. Obviously based on astrology. But the thing is, it's not really, like I said at the meeting itself, it's not really genuine astrology. It is genuine to some extent, but it's only 50-60% reliable. It's not really like individual horoscope. It's not fair to say that there are only 12 kinds or 27 kinds of people in this world, or to say that there are only 12 or 27 different fortunes during this year. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of totally different fortunes during this year. The thing is, these are the general patterns. And also the thing is, if you look at the transits of planets, that is only one aspect. You have the dashas, that is the other aspect. We have Thiti Pravesh and all these factors, which are the other aspect. So we have these various aspects. So out of those, because if you want to give a general reading, which is basically more entertaining than individual readings, I can't take 300 people and give them individual readings in just 25 minutes. So to entertain more people and guide more people to some extent, they came up with this concept of Panchanga Shravanam and general annual or monthly or weekly results. So what you do is, you ignore dashas. Somebody may be running a great dasha, somebody may be running a terrible dasha. Obviously there will be modification based on it. We ignore that factor. Somebody may be having a great annual chart based on Thiti Pravesh. Somebody may be having a terrible annual chart. We ignore that. What we look at is the transits. Even transits, if you read the results given in Panchanga for each Rashi, they are like a page full. If I have to do that for 12 Rashis, basically it will take several hours. And that will be the duration of the entire program set up by Subbarao Garu. He just gave me 20 minutes or maybe 25 minutes. So I can't cover all the planets. So Sun, he covers 12 signs during that time. Mars covers maybe 9 signs. Venus and Mercury cover 12 signs during that 1 year. So I can't cover them. And Moon covers 12 signs 12 times. Is that right? Yeah, 12 times, 12 times. So 144 different results of Moon. So I can't basically be covering all that. So what I take is, I take Jupiter He is basically in two different signs during the year. Saturn, he is in two different signs because he is changing sign during the year. And Rahu and Ketu, they are stuck in the same sign during the year. So I have a simple combination. So I see particularly transits that particularly stand out, either being good or bad. If they are really bad, but if there is some potential to improve it, if the planet is, let's say, in the 8th house, but as a Swarnamurti, or let's say 8th house as a Rajatamurti, he is, pardon me? Murtis I haven't covered before? I did. So go back and listen to the, yeah. When we were doing transits, I think I covered it is simply based on the sign occupied by moon. You see which house moon occupies. When a planet is coming into a sign, at that time, when the planet enters the sign, where moon is, with respect to your own natal moon. From the sign occupied by moon in your natal chart, the sign occupied by moon right now, you count the house. If the house is 1, 6 or 11, the planet who entered a new sign on that day, when moon is so placed, he becomes a Swarnamurti, golden idol. If he is in the 2, 5 and 9, he is Rajatamurti. He is a silver idol, silver form. If he is in the 3, 7 and 10, he is a Kansyamurti. He is a Tamramurti. He is copper form. And if he is in the remaining signs, 4, 8 and 12, Chaturasras, 4, 8 and 12, then he is a Lohamurti, iron form. And the theory being, a planet being a golden form wants to be nice to you. If a planet is in Rajatamurti, it is less good. Basically, Swarna is, gold is very good, silver, Rajata is good, copper, Tamra is bad, Loha, iron is terrible. So excellent, good, bad, terrible. So those are the classifications. So let's say somebody has Jupiter in the 11th house right now. It's an excellent transit. He should be giving a lot of financial gains. But if he is a Lohamurti, he simply doesn't like you. He is told to give you good results, but he doesn't like you. He is not in a mood. He is too lazy to give those results. So in that case, propitiation really helps. So I basically identified such key things. So in this case, propitiate Jupiter. Do so and so, either this devata or Jupiter himself. If you do that propitiation, it's basically maximizing your results. Basically, like they say, maximize the bang for your buck. If you have to do some remedies to get the maximum results, if somebody is, let's say, a malefic is in the 6th house, like Saturn in 6th house as a Swarnamurti, he is already giving the best results. You don't really have to do any remedies. On the other hand, if Jupiter is in the 11th house as a Lohamurti, he is capable of giving you good results, but he is not doing it. So if you do remedies for him, it will maximize the bang for your buck. Similarly, if a planet is in the 8th house, if he is Swarnamurti, he may not be troubling you that much. But if he is in the 8th house and he is, let's say, Tamramurti, he has to give you worries, and also being a Tamramurti, he is not in a good mood. So he will actually end up giving you more troubles. So in that case, if you are going through troubles and if you want some relief, that is the planet that you should propitiate. So I identified particularly good and particularly bad planets that you can, where the particularly bad results can be minimized, can be suppressed, or particularly good results that are not coming up for some reason can be made more obvious. So I just suggested those remedies. That's basically what I did. And the comments I made about Iran, Iraq, all these things, I said Iran and Iraq, their New Year charts look really bad, I told you. That was based on what we covered earlier, a couple of years back, the lunar New Year chart. When Sun and Moon are exactly together in Pisces, we make the chart. So I looked at that chart, and if you look at Iran's New Year chart cast at Tehran a few weeks back, on March 18 or 19, basically when Sun and Moon were together in Pisces, you will be interested to see that the Moon and Sun are in the 5th degree, at the beginning of the 5th degree, around 4 degrees some minutes of Pisces. And Lagna is also at the same place. So Lagna, Sun and Moon are very, very close. That is said to be that is called an Amavasya Yoga on the Lagna. If there is an Amavasya Yoga on Lagna in any divisional chart, it is bad. It is on Lagna itself in the same degree and minute. So that is a terrible yoga. So they may be feeling belligerent, but the thing is, it's not a good time for them to be messing with the giants of the world order. So that is why I said that, and a few other things. When I looked at that particular chart, it looked really bad. We can maybe, if we have computer, we can look at it later.
Actually, in class 63, 64, we did that.
We did Iran's
No, entire almost 6, 7, 8, 11 examples of lunar years.
Right. So it was basically the same theory. And if you look at Iraq, because every year we keep hoping that maybe there will be some improvement. If you look at Iraq's New Year chart, Aquarius rises, Lagna Lord Rahu is in Aquarius, which is not bad, but 8th Lord Mercury is also there, and he is in Mrityubhaga. The 8th Lord in Lagna with Lagna Lord, and he is in Mrityubhaga, the exact degree, the death inflicting degree. And he is the ruler of the year, he is the Hora Lord. So it looks really damned. So I mean, they look doomed. They seem doomed for another year, unfortunately. Though we want the life in Iraq to come to some level of normalcy, it doesn't look like it's going to happen this year. And it seems like, in addition, some problems in Israel on this side and some problems in Iran on the other side are going to complicate the situation and get the whole area burning this year. And as a matter of fact, Saturn and Ketu are going to be together this year. And usually Saturn-Ketu conjunctions are not that good for the world. They are very explosive. It is Tapas Yoga if Venus also conjoins, which will be for a small duration during the year. So that is good depending on your own chart, but Ketu is the planet of explosive events, crazy events, which lead to moksha. He wants moksha. He doesn't really distinguish between anything. He is like an aghori sadhu. So Ketu doesn't really our normal concepts of this is a good thing for the world, this is a bad thing for the world. Ketu doesn't really think in those terms. Everything is good. If million people die, it's not a bad thing from Ketu's point of view. Well, less burden on earth. He wants everybody to get moksha. He wants only Nirguna Brahman to be there. All this Maya to totally disappear. That is Ketu's attitude towards life. So, as a result, he can be headless. Ketu is headless. And he can result in a lot of stupid and sudden events, explosive events in the world. And when Saturn and Ketu are together, usually Saturn is the planet of suffering. Ketu is the planet of suddenness, and Saturn is the planet of suffering. So when Saturn and Ketu are together, there can be some sudden suffering in the world. And it is Leo, so it can be some kings, some people in the ruling class can be some people in the ruling class can become headless, they can take weird decisions. But in general, moreover, they are an inimical sign. Leo is not really a friendly place for either of them. So both of them it is like two people who can be totally crazy when they get together and destroy a house. They go to the house of their worst enemy. Ketu wants to eclipse Sun, Saturn hates his father's son. So both of them go to their worst enemy's house, and then when they are together, they can be ruthless. So you can judge it from there. Bottom line is, it's a really terrible year actually. Quite honestly, I didn't whatever I wanted to say, I basically sugar pilled it a little bit in the when I spoke about how the next year is going to be. I'm very concerned about the next 12 months. It is not a good time for the world. So like I said in the meet, all we can do is do our own prayers, do our own sadhana. I mean, it's not really the right thing to pray, nobody should die, nothing should happen, no war, because you don't know if something that's seemingly bad can actually be good. When you have an upset stomach, if you want to vomit, if you want to induce vomiting, it may feel bad, but the thing is, once you vomit, you are going to feel a lot more relief. I'm sorry if those of you who are sensitive, who not necessarily in the class, those who listen to the audio may not like the analogy, but sometimes a big disaster, either natural or man-made disaster, can basically be like that. So we are basically nobody to pray that this should happen, that should happen. We can't really be specific in our prayers. All we can pray is Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May the worlds be happy. Worlds may be happy because nothing happens, or worlds may be happy because a big war breaks. That is not for us to judge. We don't really judge that. All we say is Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Let there be peace. And whatever is the best path for that, not from a short-term point of view, but from a long-term point of view. She knows it, and she will ensure that will happen.
Now, how to get this minister, king, like those that list you have got?
Yeah, that I gave for the sake of completeness, just based on the tradition. but I have my doubts about the current methodology. It is given in some books, some classics, but it is not really from a great authority such as Parashara. The way they do it is, I don't have the exact list in front of me, but what they do is, they take the New Year chart when Sun and Moon conjoin together in Pisces that we do normally.
Any country?
They normally do it for India. But if you listen to my next sentence, it will become obvious to you that it doesn't matter. Then what they do is, they don't take the Hora Lord or something like we do in Tithi Pravesh charts. They take the weekday Lord. So if the New Year basically comes on a Monday, Moon becomes the ruler of the year. In our case, basically it was on a Monday, right? The lunar New Year happens to be on Monday. Actually, if you make the chart for US, it was basically no. If I remember right, it was Sunday night. Sunday night was it was a Sunday night. Sunday night was when Sun and Moon exactly conjoined, and when the Pratipad, the new Tithi started, it was sometime in the night of Sunday. Okay? But the thing is, the way they do in tradition is, if it happens to be, they don't take the exact time when Sun and Moon conjoin. They take the next sunrise, because celebration will start on the celebration of the New Year will start at sunrise. If it happens at night, they take the next sunrise. Not only night, even if it happens, let's say at 10 o'clock in the morning, they take the next morning. So if Sunday 10 o'clock Sun and Moon conjoin in Pisces, the New Year starts. Then they take Monday to be the first day of the New Year, and Moon to be the Varesha, the weekday Lord. So they take Moon to be the king of the year, the ruler of the year. Okay? It is, in my view, it is totally suspect. This is basically corrupted. This is a corruption of Kali Yuga. Because we are living in Kali Yuga, a lot of teachings of the rishis were lost, and some remaining knowledge was basically corrupted by people. And the thing is, I have never really seen any totally accurate predictions made on the basis of the cabinet. You can make predictions based on the planetary position and dashas, but just based on the cabinet, because you will say something based on king, something based on minister, something based on commander-in-chief. If you put all of them together, you cover the entire spectrum, if you actually read what they give in Panchangas. Right. So I'm a skeptic with respect to that. But just for the sake of completeness, let me finish. And for minister, they take some other chart. See, we have all these different New Year charts, right? So they have Sun and Moon conjoining not in Pisces, but in Aries. I think that is for commander-in-chief. So like that, conjoining in Libra or Virgo for business. So like that, for different purposes, I think in Gemini for the Meghas, etc. So they take Sun-Moon conjunction charts in various signs to see a particular matter. And we have a similar concept. We have seen a similar concept earlier. We take Sun-Moon conjunction charts or Sun-Moon opposition charts. Instead of the Amanta, we use Shuklanta, right? Sometimes we take Sun and Moon being exactly opposite each other. Full Moon chart instead of New Moon chart. So we take full Moon charts in particular signs for particular purposes, right? And we use, for example, the New Moon chart in Libra instead of Pisces to see the financial matters, that is business matters. That is what we do. So like that, we also have variations, but here they don't take those charts. They take the time, but they take the next working day, so next sunrise, take the weekday, and the lord of that weekday, they call him minister, commander-in-chief, Meghadipati, Varshadipati, etc. And then they take his placement in the New Year chart, which is basically March 19 chart. Pisces, Sun-Moon conjunction Pisces chart. In that chart, they see how these various planets are, and based on that, they judge the matters. And moreover, actually, some people don't even do that. Just based on who the planet is. If it is Saturn, bad. If it is Jupiter, good. Like that. So based on who the planet is, they give some general readings. So this is what normally people do. But this is what we do in Andhra Pradesh. But Dr. Raman, he basically has a different approach. He doesn't take Sun-Moon conjunction charts. This is based on the Tamil approach, where you celebrate the New Year based on just Sun, not Sun-Moon angle. When Sun enters Aries, it's the New Year. So there, the king of the year is selected based on Sun entering Aries. If Sun enters Aries, let's say on a Monday at 11:45 p.m., then similarly you take the next day Next day sunrise, take the weekday Lord. So Mars will be the role of the year. Similarly, they do the entire cabinet based on sun entering various signs. Sun entering each sign. Out of the 12 signs, there are 9 signs single out for different purposes. You understand what I am saying? So that is how they find. And some people, instead of taking the sunrise, they take the noon. So the next immediate noon after this chart has commenced, after this particular event that you have defined, either sun entering a sign or sun and moon conjoining in a particular sign. So after that event that you defined happens, that is when the new year has actually started. But the celebration is sunrise, right? Instead of sunrise, some people take noon. So the next noon, so if it happens at 11:45 p.m., you take the next noon, the same day. So if it happens at 11:45 p.m. on a Monday, you take moon himself as the king instead of Mars. So all these various things are there, and the thing is, the king, the minister, etc. are going to be the same for all planets, all countries, because it's pretty much going to be the same weekday. But sometimes it can be different by off by one day, so it can be off by a planet. Okay. My individual thinking, this is just my thinking, this is not based on any shastras, but my thinking is, obviously this is, like I said, this is not from Parachar's teaching, this is basically modern authors. By modern I don't mean last 50 years, I mean the last 1000 years. In my view, last 1000 years is basically modern era in astrology, because all these Muslim invasion, Christian invasion happened. Before that, some dumping of the intellect due to Kali Yuga has already happened, and then all these invasions happened. So the knowledge basically became corrupted. On the other hand, if you take what Parasara taught, it is much more sophisticated. Unfortunately, he did not teach this particular thing. So my take is, forget the Varesha, take the Horesha, the Hora Lord, at the exact time, and forget the next noon or sunrise or sunset or whatever. Those are for the purpose of celebration. Astrologically, when sun enters the sign, New Year started. When sun moon conjoin, the New Year started. Whether you use solar calendar or lunar calendar, whether you use sun moon being together or being opposite, whether you use full moon or new moon, whatever you use, when that exact event happens, the New Year started. Forget about the next noon or sunset or sunrise. At that time, don't look at the Vara Lord, look at the Hora Lord, the planetary hour at that time. Okay? And we use this very successfully in Tithi Pravesh.
Right.
So the thing is, even though we don't have this particular thing taught clearly in tradition, we can take hints from what tradition teaches with respect to individual New Year. This particular thing is universal New Year. But when it comes to your own individual New Year, we make the Tithi Pravesh chart, we see when the sun moon angle matches what it was at your birth, when the same angle returns, with sun being in the same sign, we are making a chart at that time. We are not saying, okay, this is when New Year starts, but you know what, take the next sunrise and take the Vara Lord of that time. We are not doing that. Maybe you will do that if you want to celebrate. Suppose your Tithi Pravesh occurred at, let's say, 6 o'clock today evening. You will probably celebrate tomorrow as your birthday. You will distribute sweets to your friends next day. But the thing is, if you were to meditate at the time of New Year, or if you were to do a puja at the exact time of New Year, you will do it at 6 o'clock today instead of tomorrow. So that is the actual time when the stars are lined up, just like at your birth. So similarly here, if you apply the same thinking, take the exact definition and take the Hora Lord. So that is what I did. When I looked at Iraq and I said Mercury is the king, what I meant is, at the time the New Year started in Iraq, the Hora was Mercury. If you go somewhere else, if you go to US, the Hora Lord is somebody else. If you go to India, the Hora Lord is somebody else. There are basically, because the exact hour, that depends on how many hours have passed since sunrise. So if you go to very close by neighbor like Iran and Iraq, they may have the same Hora Lord, but then the Navamsa placements etc. will be different. But if you go to a slightly faraway country, the Hora Lord is going to be different. So my take is, different countries have different kings based on this. So that is one thing. And the other thing is, with respect to the planetary cabinet, who are the important planets? We have these different charts. For example, we have the new moon chart in Libra for we use it for financial matters. So he is basically like the Secretary of Finance during that. You can come up with your own. You don't have to just restrict yourself to 9 leaders. Of course, actually, even in tradition, we have like 27 or so nayakas, sometimes even 30 plus. So we can define all these nayakas based on the solar calendars, based on the lunar full moon calendars, lunar new moon calendars, and we already know something about the significance of certain charts. But then, I don't suggest taking those planets in the New Year chart. Each is a New Year chart. When you take the Deepavali chart, for example, the end of Deepavali chart, which is Sun and Moon conjoining together in Libra, that itself is a New Year chart. It is a New Year chart for financial matters. It governs the next 12 months for financial matters. So, if you want to say, pick somebody as the Secretary of Finance in your government during this year, you can pick the hora lot of that chart for your country, wherever you are. But the thing is, don't say that they will take effect from March. The king comes in March and goes in the next March. But the finance secretary may come in November and go on till next November. So these are all basically non-aligned events. So that is basically my take. So all these charts are important and they have, each has its own role. And just as you may judge, for example in Iraq's chart I said Mercury is the king and he is 8th lord in Lagna in Mrityubhaga. So I said lot of death and destruction in the country this year. Similarly, if I look at Iraq's financial New Year chart, Moon may be the hora lord. I will see how Moon is in that chart, in the November chart. So like that we can make different charts for different purposes. So there are some that are hinted in the tradition, but this is an area where some good research can be done. There are some that are passed down in the tradition that I passed down to you, but I am sure there are more. Basically you can define 12 new moon charts and 12 full moon charts and 12 solar ingress charts. There itself you have 36 charts, right? And in addition you can define sun entering different constellations charts. For example, sun entering the constellation of Ardra is considered very important for the waterfall during the rainfall during the year. When sun enters the constellation of Ardra, you make a chart for that place, whichever place you live in. And then you see that chart and see how the rainfall is going to be that year, whether there will be a lot of rains or whether there will be drought, all those things you can see, which we may cover some other time. There are some guidelines given in the tradition. So like that there can be different charts. So this is basically the possible, there are many possibilities. Only thing is, through research you can find, okay, this stands for this. This chart is good for throwing light in this kind of matters. So like that you can basically, for example, I was looking some time back at the Ashadha, just like the Chaitra Shukla Pratipada chart. I was looking at Ashadha Shukla Pratipada chart. There are actually some areas in Rajasthan and some parts of Gujarat and Rajasthan, I believe, some parts of India where they celebrate the New Year and Ashadha Shukla Pratipada. So when the Ashadha month starts, that's when they celebrate their New Year. So basically it is Chaitra, Vaishakha, Jyeshtha, Ashadha, right? So Pisces, Aries, Taurus and Gemini. So when Sun and Moon conjoin together in Gemini, the third house of the natural zodiac, that is when they make their New Year chart. And they say how the year is going to be based on that chart, not the chart that we use in Andhra. And the thing is, when I studied those charts, my conclusion was they were actually good for showing any weather extremities like big hurricanes, big rainfalls, any extremities in the weather. They were interesting from that point of view. And if you see the other chart used in tradition for timing the rainfall during the year is Ardra Pravesha of Sun, and Ardra is a constellation in Gemini. So there is again a link. There is some importance of Ardra and also Gemini when it comes to nature, when it comes to rain. I am not exactly sure what, but it was just an observation. So like that, if you study a few charts without any bias, you can come up with some conclusions. So this is an area open for research, but my thinking is, with some research we can define this theory of the cabinet, planetary cabinet. Whatever I gave in the meeting, it was just entertainment. Because unless we have something that I totally bought into, I will respect the tradition. I will basically follow the tradition, but I am pretty sure it's all nonsense. Especially taking the weekday lord and taking the next sunrise is basically nonsense.
Okay, everybody was so asked about how India is going to be based on the Lord.
Yeah. So I didn't really spend much time on those lots. I just gave some general results they give. But whatever I said about India, US, financial markets, or Iran, Iraq, Israel, all this was based on the New Year chart, which is, in my experience, much more reliable than these subjective things. Planet in Mrityubhaga is basically in each Rashi there is one particular Trimshamsa, which is 1/30th of a Rashi, which means 1 degree. There is 1 degree that is fatal for that planet. Unfortunately, I haven't memorized, so I can't tell you. But it is something like this. In Aries, for Sun, so and so degree, let's say 3rd degree. In Taurus, for Sun, let's say 7th degree. Like that, you define a particular degree in each Rashi. It depends on the planet. If you, instead of Sun, if you go to Moon, the degree will be different. So you have a table basically, all the planets and all the signs. So you have a table, which degree is the death inflicting degree. It is coded in my software, Jehora. So if you go to Jehora, the main basics window, there where longitude etc. are defined. If you click the right mouse button, there is a menu. In that menu, you have the entry, planets, show planets in Mrityubhaga, or something like that. So if you click that, it will show how far the planets are from the middle of the Mrityubhaga. So if a planet is very close to the Mrityubhaga, basically you will see that there. So here again, actually, let me address it. Let me just record it for the sake of recording. Let me address this. When it comes to Mrityubhaga, there are different views. There are 2 different classics. Jataka Parjatam has one view, another classic has another view. I mean, actually they all match, the numbers match, except for Moon's Mrityubhaga, there are some minor differences. So what I did in my software is I coded both of them. And the default, if you don't make a preference, if you don't choose, prefer this classic with respect to this classic, if you don't do that, it will basically do what Sanjay ji feels is right. Again, it's not 100% sure, but this is basically what we believe in tradition. So I gave that. But if you want, you can basically go to the other preference. If you go to the preferences related to calculations, Mrityubhaga preferences. If you go to that, there are 2 choices. Basically, there are 2 sets of classics. One set of classics gives one definition for Moon, another set of classics gives another definition for Moon. So you could try both of them. And that is one thing. And there is another controversy relating to Mrityubhagas, which is in my view totally unnecessary. When classics define, they say 8th degree in so and so sign is Mrityubhaga for so and so planet. They say 8th degree, which means if you go from 0 degrees to 1 degrees, it is 1st degree. 1 degree to 2 degree is the 2nd degree. 2 degrees to 3 degrees is 3rd degree, and so on. And 30th degree is 0 to 29.99, right? So that is the definition of 1st degree, 2nd degree, etc. Unfortunately, some scholars like K.S. Charak, you should give credit to K.S. Charak because he popularized Mrityubhaga. Even though they were in classics, nobody used them. This gentleman called K.S. Charak, who used to be in the K.N. Rao group but fell off with K.N. Rao later, he is an expert in medical astrology, and he found Mrityubhaga to be very useful in medical astrology because these actually result in huge diseases, terrible diseases, or sometimes even death, planets in Mrityubhaga. So he found it useful in his research in medical astrology, and he covered these in his book on medical astrology, I believe. Yeah, he has 2 books on medical astrology. So he covered Mrityubhagas in that book. So there, the interpretation he gave is different. Let's say for a particular planet in a particular sign, 18th degree is Mrityubhaga. Our take is 17 to 18 degrees. Between 17 degree and 18 degree is the 18th degree. So that is the death inflicting part. That's 1 degree. He says 18th degree is Mrityubhaga, means the exact point, 18th degree point is the Mrityubhaga. You can go plus minus half degree. So he says 17.5 to 18.5. So that is how he has interpreted. Sometimes it works because there is obviously there is an overlap, but sometimes it doesn't work. But it is not at all logical. Always, whenever Parashara or any classic writer referred to a particular degree, nth degree, they meant n-1 to n-1 degree to n degree. This is the nth degree. You divide the Rashi into 1st degree, 2nd degree, up to 30th degree. That is the only logical and tenable interpretation. Unfortunately, when Charak read it, he basically went off on along a wrong line, and later probably it became an ego issue or something for him to acknowledge that he made a mistake. So he still insists that it is 18 degree plus minus half degree. So just for the followers of Charak, because as a software writer, as a teacher, I say this is wrong, this is right. But as a software writer, I have to encourage everything. I have to basically support everything. So there is an option. If you go to Mrityabhaga related calculation options in the preferences, you will see 18 degree means 17 to 18, 18 degree means 17 and a half to 18 and a half, 18 degree means 18 to 19. Just for the heck of it, I even added the third option. 18 degree means starting from the 18 degree point and going till another degree. Now the thing is, in his view, if the 30th degree is considered to be fatal for a planet, it will basically be 29 and a half to 30 and a half, which is kind of silly. So that, however, if you want to use that is also given in my software. So you could experiment with Mrityabhaga. Yes.
If you take an analogy, like the peak sun at 12 o'clock in the afternoon,
Yeah.
so the maximum intensity you have.
Yeah.
So 11:30 and 12:30
Yeah.
will be around, if you it will start coming down on
Yeah.
the other side and
Yeah.
the other side.
Yeah.
So is it possible to have some kind of analogy?
Right. Except that we are talking about the degrees here.
Right. So
We are not talking about a point. See, Parashara not Parashara. The classics that refer to this, Jataka, Pajatam, etc., don't refer to a point in the zodiac. These Mrityabhagas are not referred to as points in the zodiac, in which case you can say this particular point is the problem and plus minus half degree, like you take noon is a point.
Right.
So you take plus minus half hour or plus minus hour or whatever. But this is not a point, this is a part. Bhaga is a part, a portion. Bhaga literally means a portion. So this is a depth portion. Literally speaking, it translates to depth portion. So when you are talking about a portion, there is an inference of a length. So when you are talking about a range, and also it says 12th amsha, 12th degree, 13th degree. So it basically cannot be 11 and a half to 12 and a half. That can't be the 12th degree. Moreover, actually if you think of it, Trimshamsa is the chart that shows the sufferings that you have to go through as a result of all the previous evils that you have done. So this is basically the root of all this definition comes from Trimshamsa chart. A particular planet having a particular degree being fatal has its roots in Trimshamsa, which Trimshamsa is false in, etc. So if you study the pattern, it is actually rooted in Trimshamsa, and Trimshamsa is 1 over 30th of a Rashi. So 0 to 1 degree is one Trimshamsa, 1 to 2 degree is another Trimshamsa, etc. If you take the the D30 chart, so this is based on the D30 division. So again, the transitions are exact integer degree points. Whenever actually I look at a Tithi chart, one of the first things that I look at is Horalad, and I quickly see if there is any planet in Mrityabhaga. Typically, if there is a planet in Mrityabhaga during that year, in that planet dasha, especially if there is also a link of that planet to some other negative factors, like being in the 8th house, being with the 8th lord, aspecting 8th house, or being in A8, some negative influence is also there with a planet in Mrityabhaga, invariably that dasha will be bad. Of course, you can't predict death based on Mrityabhaga in Tithi chart, because you can't die every year or every few years. So it won't be death, but it can be some suffering. On the other hand, if it is Mrityabhaga in natal chart itself, it is really terrible. That dasha can bring huge suffering or death-like situations. Again, you can't say just based on Mrityabhaga and also some links to undesirable factors. Then you can be almost sure that Antardasha or dasha will be bad. So if you have the dasha of an 8th lord and Antardasha of a planet in Mrityabhaga associated with the 8th lord, probably there's going to be a big problem during that dasha. There can be, I know cases where during such Antardashas, people even go into coma, or suddenly cancer is discovered and they fight against cancer. Things like that are possible. So Mrityabhaga is something that you should not ignore. And while I am at it, I mentioned the medical astrology book by K.S. Charak, so I'll just say my 2 cents on it. It's a very nice book. K.S. Charak is one of the gifted authors in astrology. He is basically a medical doctor, educated in London, very highly qualified medical doctor in modern medicine. So
Name also is a doctor.
Charak is also a doctor name. Yes, His parents had a lot of foresight. So being educated in the modern ways and having read modern literature, modern medical literature, he basically tries to be very systematic, and his books basically give you the impression of a nicely written scientific paper or nicely written scientific textbook. So very thorough, very systematic. That way it's a very nice book. But from the point of view of the content, he ignores the disease chart, for example, the Shashtamsa, which is really key for diseases. Probably because he was not taught that by K.N. Rao. K.N. Rao does not specialize in that particular chart. He does not use that chart. Probably he was not exposed to that chart. So all his researches did not include the most important chart for disease. But of course he uses the Rashi chart, which is important, Navamsha, which is important. And then he for some reason thinks that D12 is important for diseases. D12 simply because it's 12th house. See, 6, 8 and 12 are bad, the sthanas. So he thinks D12 is a bad chart. It's a chart that shows diseases. In my take on that is, 12th house is the house of is the chart of D12 is the chart of parents according to Parasara, not diseases. Of course, some diseases have roots in parents. A particular disease may be hereditary, so you may inherit it from father or mother. So from that point of view, D12 may be relevant to a very minor extent. But the way he uses D12 is unacceptable to me. It is not simply not right. And that is one thing. And the other thing is, most importantly, the basics, the fundamental building blocks of his medical astrology are flawed. If you want to mix astrology with medicine, you have to go with Ayurveda. I'm not sure if there is a good book on Ayurvedic astrology. Unfortunately, I don't think there is. Jupiter, Venus being the Kapha planets, Sun and Mars being Pitta planets, and any disease basically having to do with the gunas in your own body. That is basically a very, very fundamental point. And D30 is a very fundamental chart because that shows your vulnerability, your subconscious vulnerability. And all physical diseases come because of subconscious vulnerabilities. So whenever we look at any disease example, so far in the last few years, we always looked at which charts? D30 and D6, those are our staple charts. And unfortunately, he doesn't rely on those that much. D30 he probably mentions a little bit, but not that much. So those are his weaknesses. You have to go to D30, you have to use Ayurveda. If only Dr. Charak, with his modern education in medicine, if he spent a few years learning Ayurveda, he could have written a much better book. With his writing skills, he could have come up with a masterpiece. So in my view, that book really lacks, because sometimes the parameters that you are expressing are not really satisfactory. This is like modern medicine, with due respect. It is good in terms of treating the human body as a machine, and then saying, okay, take this screw and unscrew this screw and put this screw. That attitude it basically has. Whereas planets are the driving forces of your consciousness. Planets are nothing but the forces which take hold of your consciousness. Graha literally means one which takes hold of. Grahayati iti graha. So those which take hold of your consciousness. So when you are talking about planets, you are talking about forces that are operating at the level of consciousness. And unless you go to Ayurveda and understand it from the point of view of consciousness and vulnerabilities in the consciousness, you can't really link planets to the diseases quite well. I know that Dr. Brendan Feely, we had the fortune of having him here last couple of years. He made some presentations here. He is one of the leading lights in this particular research. In combining Ayurveda, there are a lot of links given in tradition, but unfortunately nobody really wrote any good book on this. So I believe that he is planning to write a book on, or he is in the process of writing a book on Ayurveda, medical astrology from the Ayurvedic point of view. So if that point of view was added, Dr. Charak's book would have been good, and also D6 and D30 were added. So still it is a good book because it is an exercise in writing a nice book, and also it has some valid examples and valid points. So it's a good book worth buying if you are interested in medical astrology. Actually, we are almost done, so we can take up the 5th house later. If you have any other questions, we can just have some freewheeling thoughts today.
How you decide country chart?
Country charts, okay, very good question. So when we We kind of covered it in the past. The thing is, there are different kinds. When you say country chart, a country like India has existed forever. But in this current form, as a country with these borders, with this constitution, with this kind of people, it existed only since 1947. So, what people normally do is on 1947 August 15 at midnight, that is when they declared, okay, we are a new country. A new existence has started for this particular group of people. So a new consciousness has been formed at that time. So you make a chart at that time, and you just treat it as a human chart. You use all the techniques. But I have misgivings about using dashas like Vimshotri Dasha, because Vimshotri Dasha is based on the assumption that the typical maximum longevity of a human being is 120 years in Kali Yuga. It's based on that assumption. Whereas for a country it may not be 120 years. So there may be a compression or more likely elongation needed. So I don't like to rely on the dashas, even though some well-known astrologers like Sri K.N. Rao, they use the dashas. Even Pandit Sanjay Rath, my guru, they use the dashas. But I prefer not to use dashas, because from the point of view of logic and scientific, being scientific is totally unscientific. So I don't use dashas myself with India, but I use the Tithi Pravesh chart, because Tithi Pravesh is based on the angle between sun and moon matching what it was when you were born every year. So that annual chart, when your birthday comes every year, when your lunar birthday comes every year, that chart is valid for you, for India. Transits are valid. Suppose Rahu is transiting over your Mars will make you very aggressive, and Rahu is transiting over that, and he may make you make some unwise decisions in your anger, in your aggression, stuff like that. When you use the transits, again that is logical. There is no difference based on whether you are a dog or a human being or a country, right? So why I said dog is, dogs have a different longevity. They don't live 120 years. If you take elephant, it is different. If you take a crow, it is different. So based on the jati, the dashas may have to be compressed. 120 years may not be applicable, and bacteria may be different. So like that. Similarly, country. So I don't use dashas, but I use transits and Tithi Pravesh. That is one thing. But there are cases where you don't know when the country was born. Sometimes there is a clear event saying, okay, this is the beginning of our country, and everybody agrees on it, and in everybody's consciousness, in everybody's mind, they feel that, okay, now we are part of this new country. But if such a tangible event did not happen, unfortunately then we don't have a reliable New Year chart. For example, for US, there are so many different New Year charts that people have floated based on 1776 declaration, the signing, this, that. There are like 10 different charts. When I tried each of them, I was not satisfied with any of them. So I prefer not to use any of them. In such case, we have these New Year charts that are cash based on universal events, like the Lunar New Year, the Telugu Ugadi or Tamil Vishu. When it comes, you make the chart at that time when Sun enters Aries, or when Sun and Moon are together in Pisces, starting the Chaitra Masa. There are different kinds of New Years. So when the New Year happens, at that time we make a chart, and we make the chart for the capital of the country. If you are interested in how this New Year, this Sarvajit, this New Year, New Telugu Year, New Lunar Year called Sarvajit is going to be for US, you make a chart when Sarvajit started in Washington DC. If you are interested in UK, you make it at London. If you are interested in India, you make it at New Delhi, the capital.
Because that day it happens kind of. We take the minute.
Yeah, if you take the hour and minute when the New Year starts, it's going to be the same across the world. But based on the capital, the Lagna will change. So each will have a totally different chart. So if you look at the US chart, it has Libra Lagna. It has a pretty decent. Saturn is Yokarka, he is in the 10th house of power. They will exercise their power in the world. It seems a decent chart for US. You take Iran, their Lagna has Amavasya Yoga, showing that they will go through an Amavasya, they will go through a new moon basically. They will go through a dark period.
So every year it changes.
Oh yeah, next year when the New Year starts, it's going to be a different date, different time. So it will be a totally different chart.
Not like our own chart.
Our own chart also, when your birthday comes, suppose you were born when sun was in Leo, let us say, on the Dashmi day, Shukla Dashmi. When sun is in Leo again this year, during that month, when the Shukla Dashmi, suppose you were born on Shukla Dashmi, when Shukla Dashmi comes again, and suppose you were born on Shukla Dashmi when 70% of Shukla Dashmi is over and 30% is left. So now when your birthday comes, your Tithi birthday, lunar birthday comes, again let's say 70% of Dashmi is over and 30% is left. Exactly at that point we say that your new year has started. That is your exact birth time this year. Every year there is a time like that. You understand what I am saying? So at that time, basically this comes on your New Year's, your birthday celebration. If you follow the lunar calendar instead of dates, which is common in Andhra Pradesh, so that particular day, a particular time it comes at a particular time, which can be computed using the software. So you make a chart at that time. It will be a totally different chart. It will not be like your natal chart. It will be different. And if you make a chart next year, it's going to be different again. So this year's chart may be excellent, next year's chart may be bad, and that gives important clues on how fortunes will change during this year. If you look at the individual Janma Chakra, the natal chart, and look at the dashas, each Antardasha is there for like 2.5 years or so. So during 2.5 years, these 2.5 years you can say you can get married, or you will have a great time in your career, or maybe you will have diseases. But to time exactly, precisely, during which month, which week, we use this annual chart, which is based on the lunar birthday.
So annual charts are more accurate than natal.
They are more accurate, but the thing is, if you see, they are more short term. Accurate from the point of view of having short term visibility. Whereas, see, let me put it this way. Suppose there is a small problem at my work, and I am really upset about it. But if you ask me about it 10 years later, I may not even remember it. It's not really a big deal. Basically, during these 2.5 years, during this particular Antardasha, I have a good career. But maybe during a particular week, because of some changes in the workplace, I am in a lot of frustration. It may not even show up in my natal chart, because you are talking about a week of frustration. But the thing is, during that week, when the person comes to you and asks you, I am really frustrated, what is my solution? You look at the natal chart, you don't really see any big problem. But if you look at the individual annual chart, from the perspective of this 1 year, this week's trouble is a big deal. The person is so frustrated by it. So it is very likely to be visible in the annual chart. Similarly, if you see that somebody will be married during these 2.5 years, you can make the 2 or 3 annual charts during the 2.5 year Antardasha and see which year shows clear combination of marriage. And you can even predict which month. We have seen examples in the past. This is actually not me, these people. They have looked at examples and identified the month or sometimes even week when the person got promotion, or when the person got a new job, or when the person got married, by using the annual chart. And this particular tradition that we belong to, our staple technique is this particular Tithi Pravesh technique, annual chart. It's really, it works really beautifully, and I can say that 80% or more of my successful predictions in the last 7 years or 8 years, they were made using this technique, annual chart. Usually people don't ask me, 15 years later will I become the Prime Minister of India? They come and ask, I am really frustrated at my workplace, will I change job, will these things be over? Or somebody will say, my daughter, I want to get her married, but I am not able to, will I get her married? So people are worried about the next 2-3 years always, sometimes even next 2-3 weeks. So if you just look at the annual chart for the next 2-3 years, you are all set. So 90% of your people who consult you, they will be happy.
So natal charts, then we should see.
No, even though we look at annual chart, we do some sanity check based on natal chart. Suppose somebody says I am frustrated at my workplace, and you see some bad dasha going on in the annual chart, and you see a good dasha coming after 3 weeks, and you say after 3 weeks things will be fine. For that you don't have to consult natal chart. But suppose somebody says, I want to change a job, will this job be good for me? You better consult the natal chart, because annual chart is like a ripple. So water is at this level, ripple is at this level. Water is at this level, ripple is at this level. So you have to look at where the overall level and then the ripple. So, or let's say somebody wants to get married. Just because the annual chart shows marriage may not happen. If the natal chart absolutely does not show marriage at all in this 2.5 years, there may not be a marriage. So for things that are expected to be visible even in the natal chart, really important events, if you look back 10 years later at these 2.5 years, you will see, yeah, I got married, that was an important time, right? So certain things are important, certain events are important. Suppose you were a software engineer and during a particular period you got promoted as a manager. That is a very important event. So apart from being important within the perspective of a year, it is important from the perspective of 10 years or 20 years also. You understand what I am saying? So their natal chart will very clearly show that event. But it won't tell you which month. It will say during these 2.5 years, the person has a very good chance of big rise in career. Or during these 3 years, the person has a very good chance of being married. So for important events, you look at the natal chart, you confirm from the natal chart, then using the annual chart, you refine and find the precise time when the event happens.
When I am picking up the natal chart, we go year by year, and see all the lives like that. That is more.
You can do that if you have a lot of time. But when somebody comes to me with a specific question, the first decision I have to make is it really a important question or a secondary kind of thing? If it's important, I consult natal chart. Make sure that what I am thinking, suppose somebody says, I am a software engineer, I am thinking of there is a manager position vacant in my workplace. I want to try for that. Will I get it? The thing is, if he gets it, it's a big change in his life. So I see the natal chart. And then if I see it, I look at the annual chart and fine tune the timing. Similarly, if it is something very minor, of course I don't tell him it's a minor event, man. He will be unhappy. Because it seems like a major event at this point of time. So in those cases, I just go to the Pravesh chart and give my readings. So it's a matter of judiciously choosing what you want to do. You have to know what you are doing. Okay, with that, I will end the class today. Hopefully we'll have a computer in the next class. You can see real examples. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.